Good morning, everybody. And good morning as well to you in Nipawin. It's awesome that you are joining us this morning for a morning I'm going to call Decision Sunday. You may feel this already if you've been here the last few weeks, that Jesus in the book of Mark is funneling people towards making a decision. And you feel this building already as we go through these stories of what he's doing, but maybe you don't have words for what that decision might be. And today there's going to be two decisions that we will see that Jesus has been funneling us towards. And these two decisions, at least one of them, is appropriate for you this morning. So this was a good day for you to come because there's a specific decision that Jesus is moving you towards making that you can make this morning. And when you do that, it will have the effect, so to speak, of uncorking a bottle in your life. There will be a whole lot of things that were held back that are going to be spilling over when you do this. But it's the nature of the decision makes it a little bit intimidating because it's what they call a burn the bridge decision, burn the boat decision. You kind of are already getting the idea. You've traveled somewhere using some sort of means, let's use boat. You've rowed yourself somewhere, and now you're in this place, but you've got the boat there just in case you want to go back. A burn the boat decision is when you get off of the boat and you throw a match over your shoulder and the boat goes up in flames and you're stuck. The first place we saw this in history was with Julius Caesar. His men all get to this island, I think it was Sparta, and they're going to fight these people, and they find out there's way more of them and they're way stronger than the army that's coming, and so his army's first move on this island was to plan how to leave. And so Caesar burnt the boats. This doesn't leave the army any really other option except to move forward. You've made a burn the boat decision when you decided to get married. Because marriage doesn't work if you got a boat sitting there. When I invited Tamara to come onto Nathan Island, she said yes, and she docked her boat, and then she got out and she burned the boat, and then she renamed the island. It very quickly became Nathan Land. And I realized that a lot of the things are Tamara Land, and a lot of the things that were on Nathan Island at one point actually were in that boat that burnt. And so I went to the shore looking, where do I need to get off. But the boats aren't there. And if you're married, you know that's really good. Because if there was a boat waiting there, think about what you would have missed out on. And in fact, some of the marriages that are in such a tough spot is because people haven't turned and faced each other on whatever the name of the island is and said, we're stuck here for a good long time, aren't we? Why don't we make this awesome? Instead of like, I'm going to go for a little cruise in my boat. And then we'll come back and see if this works. And I'm going to go for a little cruise in my boat. So there's some decisions that only work when they're burn the boat decisions, but those are the big ones. But the big decisions are the ones that give you the most life in your life. So let's turn to the text. We're in Mark 2, starting in verse 23. This is Jesus' fourth and fifth encounter with a group of the Pharisees, and it's actually them that's getting pushed to make a decision by his actions, his antagonism in some ways towards them. And in this encounter, he ratchets it up. Not so much in this first little bit, but by the end, he's intentionally really ticking them off. Let's read it. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what's unlawful on the Sabbath?" So Pharisees, being Jewish, are very concerned about Sabbath, and so they should be. Jewish people are rightfully concerned about Sabbath. Sabbath is one of the distinctive marks of being a Jew. The most distinctive would probably be circumcision, but it ain't that visible. Sabbath keeping is the most visible way that you can be Jewish in the ancient world, and so that's where the points of persecution were. If the government was hard, or the politicians of Rome was hard on Jews, it was usually around Sabbath, because you can tell if somebody's keeping Sabbath or not. And if it's against the law to keep Sabbath, well, it's very obvious, right? You can sort of fake what you believe, but you have to actually practice Sabbath. So when they see people not working, when they see people resting, so over time, as you've been persecuted for something, it almost becomes more cherished. So we're at a place in history where the Sabbath is cherished, and the Sabbath is protected. So there's certain things that you shouldn't do on the Sabbath, but the Pharisees have literally hundreds of things in mind. So you're not supposed to, in this case, harvest on the Sabbath. Not supposed to work in your field. That should bring to your mind the idea of somebody going out in their field with a sickle or something to harvest. That's not what the disciples are doing. The disciples are just grabbing a little bit of the plant and rolling it around and presumably popping it in their mouth. That is too far. It's getting too close to breaking the law. So it's interesting to think about the Pharisees here being so scared in a way of God that they don't want to get close to disobeying Him. That's an interesting flip for some of you. Some of you know that God doesn't want you to do this, so you're not even going to do this. And you may think that's really holy of you, but that might just mean you're really scared of God and don't understand grace. That you would keep yourself so far away. It's not really the point here, but it's kind of interesting. The Pharisees, super into Sabbath, building a fence around it, don't get anywhere near, and Jesus' disciples don't seem to care. Jesus answers, have you never read what David did? So David, King David, like the man in the Jewish imagination and history. Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar the high priest, this is what David did. He entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat, and he also gave some to his companions. David breaks a rule. It's not the same as the communion bread here, but if somebody was using it for sandwiches right now, we'd kind of be a little miffed. Right? Dial that up really high. Consecrated bread, David and his unclean band of warriors are hungry, they cruise in, and they eat the bread. This is the story that Jesus chooses to try to explain what he's doing with his disciples on the Sabbath, and it's really not the greatest story to choose if what you're trying to do is justify the actions of the disciples based on arguments about Sabbath and what's allowed and what's not allowed based on precedent and history. So you know how law courts work, right? There needs to be precedents for new decisions. Usually when they're arguing about things like Sabbath, they look at all the different precedents and thinking, and they synthesize it together, and so here's why what I did is okay. Jesus hasn't even mentioned Sabbath or any kind of precedent in his defense. All that he's mentioned is David, and he's made a connection between David's authority to change the rule and Jesus' authority to change the Sabbath. There are some people that have authority to change rules and some that don't. I tend to think I have authority to change a lot of rules I don't actually have authority to change. One of them that was shocking to Tamara when we first got married was I thought the little symbols on the front of bathroom doors in public places were irrelevant. Didn't matter if there was a man with the stick legs or a woman with a little skirt. If the bathroom was free, the bathroom was free. And I remember going into like a little gas station and the guy's bathroom was busy, so I went into the women's one without any thinking about it. And it's just like a one thing, right? There's not a bunch of women in there wondering what I'm doing in there. So it makes it fine, right? So there I am, and I finish up and I come out, and there's a lot of women waiting that aren't too happy about me coming out. And I realize they don't understand my authority. They're missing out that I'm the Lord of the bathroom. Right? It's not true. I'm not. They're right to be miffed at that. Basically, like the only thing I'm Lord of is like bedtime. I can actually decide what time my kids are going to bed, right? And I can change that from day to day. Jesus, pointing at David, says we're not going to spend a lot of time explaining why what David did was right. Instead, we're going to say, he's David. He's the man. He's the king. That's the point. And then so with Sabbath, we have Jesus here basically saying the same thing. He says to the Pharisees, verse 27, then he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man, we learned that term a few weeks ago. It's Jesus' favorite nickname for himself, and it's about as pretentious and audacious and divine a term as you can find. Doesn't mean he was born of a woman. It's something else entirely. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Jesus saying that most sacred thing that you cherish that connects you with God, I get to decide what that is. It's profoundly antagonistic. I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. It's not arguing that what his disciples did was right or wrong. It's about his authority and his identity. Let's keep going to the next section. Same sort of idea. You've got the Pharisees watching Jesus, trying to catch him doing things wrong. Another time, Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man was there with a shriveled hand. Some of them, Pharisees again, were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. It's not a big stretch of the imagination to think that this man was actually brought in to trap Jesus. A lot of synagogues, a man with a shriveled hand would be unclean. If he was there, he would be lurking in the back. People would be keeping their distance from him. It's not his favorite place to go if he's even allowed to go there. And you're not far off if you're imagining what he might look like, because in that society, you're either a priest or a politician, or you work with your hands. And if you only have one hand, you're probably not doing so well for yourself. So he's on the margins of society, and the Pharisees bring him in, it seems, to trap Jesus. He's a pawn in their game. In the synagogue, they're watching Jesus. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? What's he going to do? Is he going to, we might have him here. Get your phone ready. Get ready. Jedediah, you got your phone? Ready to go? Yeah, he's got his phone on. He's ready. Jesus, what are you going to do? Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, stand up in front of everybody. Like, oh, okay. So he does. Then Jesus turns to the Pharisees and he says, what is lawful on the Sabbath, this holy day, this preserved day? Is it to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? What is the Sabbath for? What are rules for? What is your faith for? What did God call you to? Why did he choose you? All of that is in this question. What is lawful on the Sabbath? But they remain silent. They know he's got them. He looks around at them and look how he feels. He looks at the Pharisees who brought in this broken man to try and make a spectacle of him and trap Jesus. And he looks at them in anger and deep distress. This is because they have forgotten what the Sabbath is for. Just think a bit about what your life is like if you're a Jewish person and you get to every week put your feet up, breathe deeply of the beautiful world that God created, savor every sight, every smell, every sound, enjoy what he's given you, reflect on his goodness through history, hear his music in nature and around you in people's voices, focus on him, and not have to do anything taxing or tiring. And you do this every week, once a week, for your whole life. Out of that, you ask the question, so who are the most refreshed, balanced, rooted, connected to spiritual energy and power people on planet Earth? Well, it should be the Jewish people who keep Sabbath, because that was the point. And so from that place of rootedness and strength and connection to God, this rhythm in your life that grows you like a mighty oak tree, what are you supposed to do? Bless everyone around you who doesn't have that. God gave you this so that you could become something, so that you would not lord it over people, but that you might bless them. And when you don't bless them with what you've been given because you know something about God that somebody else doesn't, or you've experienced something of God that somebody else hasn't experienced, the Son of God looks at you with anger and with deep distress because of your stubborn heart. He says to the man, "Stretch out your hand." So the shriveled, gnarled hand goes out. And as it goes up, it's restored. Full function. Snap, crackle, pop, ligaments, bones, skin, whatever needs to happen, happens. And the Pharisees all go, "Yes! God is among us." No. Look at this. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. Decision time. They've seen enough. Funnel, 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 funnel. Guy gets lowered through the roof. Jesus forgives his sins. I don't know. Oh, he's eating with tax collectors and sinners. I don't know. Calls himself the bridegroom. Son of Man. Ooh. Fast. His disciples don't fast. And boom, now we're down to this place where a decision is made. In that text, there's two decisions for you. But to understand the first one, we need to pay attention to the word Herodian. So there's two groups of people. There's the Pharisees and there's the Herodians, and they're now in cahoots. That's a very fun word to say. Now they're in cahoots to kill Jesus, but it makes no logical sense for the Pharisees because the Herodians are what they call Hellenized Jews. When you hear the word Hellenized, it just means secularized, or they're Jewish people who have adapted to Greek culture. Hellenistic culture is Greek culture. So the Herodians are Hellenized Jews. In the same way that you might have somebody who has a Jewish bloodline that you might know, but they don't adhere to the traditions and the faith of Judaism. And of course, there would be people in all sorts of religions like that who maybe ethnically have a background in a certain faith, but they reflect more of the culture around them. So you've got the Pharisees who are sticklers for Sabbath and everything else, partnering with like the exact opposite, people who have said, you know what, the Sabbath, we don't actually need that. We actually don't need the dietary laws. What we need is to become in positions of influence and power, and then we can steer this thing a little bit better. Actually, the more that we can take of culture and rise to prominence, actually the better that we can help. So two very different philosophies. And they come together to try to kill Jesus. You can get your head around the Pharisee Herodian thing, I think, in a little bit of a playful way if we think about Party Week here. Because for the purposes of this, I'm not going to say Pharisees are wrong and Herodians are wrong. I'm just going to say they exist, and perhaps it has more to do with your home of origin, your personality, and your values than it actually does the Christian faith. So on Party Week in our church, what we do is we have a cover tune at the beginning. And often it's by an artist that isn't known for writing hymns or praise music. So it'll be ABBA, it'll be, I was going to say Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show, just again another Sylvia's mother plug there. But say it's somebody like a Bruno Mars, whose lifestyle we're not really into, I would guess. Or somebody like AC/DC who has some let's say non-Christian ideas in some of their lyrics. And so the Pharisee experiences it a certain way, as offensive or an affront to what they know of God and the need to be pure and holy so that God will do things through their life. Right? That's the best of the Pharisee. A desire for purity and holiness, the song like consecrate yourself to me, that would be avoid bad things so that I might do something with you. That's the best of the Pharisee. And the Herodian would rather go, isn't this awesome that we're in a place where we can see God working through even things that aren't necessarily originally for Him, but we can redeem them and use them? Aren't we ever so enlightened and open-minded? This is so great. And the Herodian, and then both of those things are perfectly fine to think in my opinion, but where it gets to be the Herodian and the Pharisee is in the way it feels when they communicate that information to somebody. So the Pharisee won't just say, okay, well, that's kind of where I'm at. Instead, what they'll do is they'll communicate that to somebody, and let's just use Jacob. This doesn't actually happen a ton, but it's just, makes sense in my story here. They'll communicate to Jacob why that song shouldn't have been played. And having done that, they'll feel like they have done their duty. They have corrected what needs to be corrected, and now the sin haze that keeps God from working is no longer there. The air is clear. There we go. That's the Pharisee. The Herodian, so there's a sense of superiority there. They're correcting. The Herodian has the same sense of superiority, but they communicate it different. So the email comes to Jacob, I love that I'm part of this church. It's so different than other churches. We've been to other churches, and I like this so much better because of this and this and this. And it smells of the same superiority. It just comes in a different way. This is why neither the Herodians or the Pharisees can stand Jesus, because you can't stand Jesus if you want your religion to make you feel superior. You can't stand Jesus if you want your religion to make you feel superior to the people around you. It will not work. So are you, with your faith, how you practice it, do you get more excited about correcting people or helping them? Does it feel really good to get things off your chest and to just let them know that they actually shouldn't be doing that? And then you feel, yeah, that was good. Set the record straight. How do you feel after that? If you feel superior, you're not feeling the presence of Jesus, friend. You're either with the Pharisee or the Herodian, and you're effectively cutting him off or killing off his presence in your life because he doesn't abide that. That's not why he gave you your strong traditional Christian upbringing that kept you sexually pure, so that you didn't have some of the baggage in marriage that most other people do. He did not give you that gift so that you could judge people. He gave you that gift, like he gave the Jews the Sabbath, so that from a position of strength and power and influence, you could speak life into the people that don't have it. It's so easy to get superior about this stuff. You serve somewhere. How does that make you feel when you look at the people that aren't serving? Kids' church, you really happy that you get to serve people's kids because God has equipped you and gifted you and given you passion for the ministry? Or are you more or less resentful about the parents that drop their kids off and don't lift a finger? Does your religion make you superior? And there might be a part of you that actually likes that. If everybody did their part, what would make you feel superior? It just keeps kind of going and going. Originally, when I was thinking about this, I wanted to have us imagine, as we were trying to diagnose for ourselves, am I using my religion just to make me superior? To imagine what it's like to experience us. Like when people walk away from you, do they feel that? Do they feel patronized? Do they feel singed? But I don't think we have to do that, because most of us have enough self-awareness to know how we feel. And if you feel superior because of what you believe or what you do, whether that's as the ever so enlightened Herodian who understands that there's 15 different ways actually to understand the very true myths of Genesis 1, and all of them are helpful for understanding us and God, or the very dogmatic Pharisee who says, no, it's a literal 7 days because you have to stick with the literal translation of the Bible or you lose everything, and I'm part of that same idea. Let's put it this way. Is your religion, have you thinking that you're here for people or that people are here for you? Is it, I'm better than you because of what I believe, or because of what I believe and what I've been given, I'm here for you? I'm better than you, or I'm here for you. Only this side is where the Spirit of Jesus is. So that's decision number one. Jesus funneling, and I think if we were to do it this way and say, like, so who's kind of on the Pharisee side of things, people would be like, yeah, okay, I'm kind of black and white. And then the other side would be like, who's more of a Herodian? Yeah, okay, and that would be me. I'm more gray. All of us would have to put up our hands with one of those two things because all of us have those tendencies. But the only one I'm interested in asking you is, can we never do that again? Can we make a decision here, each of us as a church, that we will never use our faith as a means to make us feel superior to anyone? And that when we catch ourselves doing that, we repent of it, because in that moment, we need repentance more than anybody else we have in mind, because we have effectively discarded Jesus at that point. The word in the text is, they plotted to kill him. You have killed off his influence in your life when you have decided that you're superior to somebody else. That's decision number one. Burn the bridge, burn the boat, never go back. I don't ever want to use what I know, what I've experienced, as a way to differentiate myself from somebody who needs my help, somebody who can benefit from what God's given me. It's decision number one. Let's choose that today. Decision number two is about the identity of Jesus. It really is a question about, who do you actually think he is? And will you let him define the terms for you of who he is? Because he only gives you two choices. He is either the Son of God or he is not. Those are your two choices. And when the Pharisees realize that's it, they have this moment where, oh, okay, he's either claiming to be the Son of God or he's nothing. Well, we can't go with the Son of God. He's not divine. So they had to choose something else. They saw with crystal clarity what many of us in this room have not yet seen, that those are the terms on which you can take Jesus. You can take him on no other. He either is how he presents himself as God, or he is not. Well, he has tremendous teachings and insight into human life. He's more than just a teacher. He claims to be God, like 4 times just in the verses that we read. And so you have to take him as God or not, or you're not actually listening to him. You haven't burnt the boat. You're comparing him to people he should not be compared to, other good teachers. You're taking of him what you think is good, leaving what you're not so sure about. It's time to burn the boat and have all of him. And so we come to communion, which is really a decision. And maybe you didn't know that what you were supposed to be doing when you come to communion is to reinforce that decision or even make that decision. When Jesus holds up the bread and the cup and he says, "Do this to remember me," when he thinks of what you're remembering, he's imagining you have in mind him as God, the Son of God who loved you and gave his life for you. That's what he's asking you to remember. But if you don't believe that, then what are you remembering? So everybody's welcome at the table as a symbol of the openness of God. Whoever wants to can come. But you need to understand what is being done here is that you are remembering your belief that a Jewish carpenter turned out not to just be a fantastic teacher, not just to be filled with the Holy Spirit in an amazing way, but that this man, Jesus, was actually God. And when you confess that, when you make that decision, when you burn that boat and say, I'm moving in that direction for the rest of my life, there's a fundamental change inside of you. And so think about the communion as you come forward, and I'll invite you now. I'll invite the band out, and I'll turn it back over to communion. Do this to remember me, Jesus says. And he's saying, remember him as he defines himself, as God, not how you might be comfortable having him be. Let's come forward and take together.